Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Merrimack School Board this Monday evening, November 2nd, 2015. Would you rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That will take us to item number 2 on tonight's agenda, approval of the October 19th, 2015 minutes. Can I get a motion? Made by Mr. Schneider, and a second? Made by Ms. Guagliumi. Any corrections? Ms. Guagliumi.
Just a couple. On page 2, line number 56, it says Ms. Clayton referred to a brochure and information packet she had distributed to the Merrimack School Board. So it's very specific who it was distributed to. Then line number 63, actually. They will affect the Merrimack School District. Again, just clarifying. Line 76, at the very end, make plan changes before July 1st. I would just do comma 2016. Page 3, line 134, line 135. Rates are set in the future, and the reporting of who is on the Cadillac plan, I corrected it to say would be done rather than is done. Page 5, line 223. Board Member Guagliumi thanked Principal Carragher for putting this together, and I would say I would express some concern about the cost to the families for the field trip. Line 233, impacted students who would have previously been unable to participate. I just wanted to add previously because I was comparing the Mitina experience. I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other amendments? Mr. Marcus.
I have on page 11, line 515. It should read something like, and small class presentations, including the playing of an ancient New Year's game. Wasn't really the culmination of the visit.
So strike culmination and make it including.
Yep.
Yep. An ancient New Year's game. Thank you.
And then on page 12, line 520, Lezama is Lezama. And again, on 527, Duval only has one L.
Thank you. Any other amendments? Seeing none, we will put the minutes to a vote. All those of approving the October 19th, 2015 minutes as amended signify by saying aye. Opposed, none. The motion carries 5-0-0. And what is the student rep's opinion?
In favor.
Thank you, Jake. That will take us to item number 3, public participation. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board. All we ask is that you come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone looking to address the board under public participation? Seeing none, we'll close public participation and move to item number 4, request to purchase a food service transport van from food service surplus funds. I will invite to the table Mr. Dave Zeke, our food service director, and turn this over to Business Administrator Chevenel.
Thank you very much. Just as an introduction to this item, Dave Zicke, our food service director, is appearing before you tonight to look to expend $25,586 to purchase a replacement van for his current 2008 Ford Cargo van that we purchased used, I believe, back then. He currently has $135,000 in his unassigned fund balance that's used basically and retained to support the program. Items we have purchased out of that in the past have been steam tables, your food service automation software, and any upgrades that we've had along the way. And any funds left over in that don't go back to reduce taxes. They go back into the program to support its ongoing operation. So Dave is here this night to talk about his request. Thanks.
Thank you. I just want to give you a little history about the van that we have currently. We purchased it, I think it was in 2009, as a used vehicle. It was a 2008 Ford van, and it served some purpose with us. It's been very, very dependable because we are at we have to have a fairly accurate and timed delivery from the middle school to the Reeds Ferry, then to the high school to Thornton's Ferry. So it's important that we have something that's reliable. The van that we have has had a couple of issues in the past, and that's why I kind of request to buy a new van, so I know what we have and we don't have anything hidden. After the third year, we had to have a transmission replaced on the used one, so it did cost me a few dollars in that, and maybe I learned a lesson down the road. So if we go ahead and forward and try to look at the new van, we'll have something that should be reliable for the next 5 to 7 years at least, I think. We don't put a lot of miles on the van, but there is, it's general wear and tear, and it's very important that we do have something that we can rely upon every day. A funny story was, we haven't had much rain in the last 6 months, but the day that it was pouring cats and dogs, the van didn't start, and I was like, oh. So there was an incident where we had, my heart kind of fluttered for a second, and I was able to start the van in neutral and continue on. So, but that's one of the reasons why I'm sitting in front of you tonight. With the municipal pricing, we have a quote in front of us for a 2016 Ford T50 Transit cargo van. It's got an extended wheelbase, so it's a little bit longer than the general van. And it does come with a wire partition in between the driver's area and the cargo, so this protects the driver if anything flies, goes loose. And I did talk to the gentleman, the sales rep, and he said he would take a look at our current van to see if there was a trade-in value. So we still may be able to get some money back for that as well. Do you have any questions for me as far as the vehicles? Yeah.
Hands are going up. Mr. Powell had his up first.
Good evening. Thanks, Dave. Matt, didn't we have a vehicle in the budget already for this year, or am I thinking about maintenance?
Maintenance was last year.
Was last year.
Oh, well, this year, right here. Yes.
So this is something different from
In
that.
addition, yep.
I see that the quote that you got from Grapponi was for municipal pricing. Did you put it out for a quote with other dealers?
Haven't put it out for a quote from other dealers.
That's a state bid.
This is a state bid, and I think it's probably...
So it would be the same no matter which dealer
Yeah,
we went
I
to?
believe so.
Yeah, that's the state of New Hampshire goes out to bid for its vehicles, and this year Grapponi won that bid, so we're just using their pricing.
Okay.
So we couldn't, with the state
Okay.
and all the vehicles they buy.
Got it.
Excellent.
And then you answered my question about the trade-in, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Snyder, you had your hand up.
Well, I was actually trying to look while I was here. Do you know, we all know that passenger vehicles we know have fairly long warranties. Do the commercial vehicles have a similar warranty in terms of number of years for drivetrain and stuff that you're getting?
This one, I think it was 3 years, and let me just check real quick.
Yeah, I mean, but the point is that if you buy a new vehicle, you're covered for X number of years should anything like a transmission go wrong, as opposed to what you said 2 years after you bought the used one,
Yeah,
right? So I was just curious what a commercial vehicle goes for that sort of warranty, because that would be just another way to help justify the cost of a new one.
I believe it was a 3-year bumper-to-bumper warranty on that, so,
Well, sometimes drivetrains are even longer, but
Yep.
whatever.
yeah.
You all set? Mr. Snyder?
Yeah.
Okay. Vice Chair Barnes?
If we approved it tonight, what would be the delivery date for the vehicle? How quickly would you be looking?
It would be something that would have to be ordered. It's not something that they have right on the, so I'd have to talk to the rep and make sure, what was reasonable. I would probably say within, a month.
So it would,
Before
kind
the
of pushing
winter
it even
comes.
before the snow flies, because that could be any time now.
It could
But,
be.
that's what I'm looking at. If you're having trouble with, you have safety concerns and you
Yeah.
have reliability concerns, I don't think winter and colder weather are going to do you any favors.
Not any, no.
So that being said, I just want to know what
Sure.
we were setting you up for with getting a new vehicle if we can go forth.
Okay.
So I guess that's my questions.
Okay. Superintendent, you wanted to
Just
say
wanted
something?
to say that when Dave and Matt and I conferred about this, that we did not make an assumption that you would approve it tonight. We felt that you probably would want the 2-week rule invoked simply because of the expenditure. So we did planning, if we were fortunate enough to have it happen, that it would be on consent for November 16th, with the idea that we would try and have it turned around by January. I think that's how we planned.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, based on the consent, I guess, if there's a trade-in, we don't have that number right now, so would it be something we would approve up to $25,586?
With the idea that we try and get it cut back if we could.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Schneider?
I've answered my own question. I thought I'd share, is that it's bumper to bumper 3 years, 36,000, but powertrain is 5 years, 60,000.
Okay.
So you've got that
Yep.
extra thing.
Thank you.
Thanks. That actually leads me to a question. Roughly, how many miles a year do you expect the van, or have we experienced the van to do? Knowing that local traffic, just driving from one end of Merrimack to another and back and back and back, can really add up. I'm
Yeah,
just curious.
I believe it's under 10,000 a year.
10,000
But
a
I'd
year.
have to double check with the records on that.
So you had said I would expect the van to get us 6 or 7 years to 60 or 70,000, but not really beyond that. Okay.
Someone was in that.
And
that
why
area.
wouldn't we expect to get maybe more than that?
Well, we possibly could.
Okay.
But the one we have now, the 2008, it's at its 7th year, so
Okay.
only for that reason. That's my history.
Past
on that.
experience. Okay. All right. I know one of the things that we see, right, is with the trucks, right, that have plows on them,
Yeah.
right, the mileage is low, but they're going through a lot of, like, wear and tear. I'm just curious
We do
how the van
we do
stacks
transport some heavy loads on that, and that's
that- maybe
one of the
that
things that
takes away.
I go through the brakes and the tires quicker.
That would make sense. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, when David came to me and he mentioned the part about, excuse me, starting it in neutral, that's a warning sign of a safety neutral lockout switch, where you should be able to start your vehicle in park, but the vehicle doesn't realize it's in park because of the gears on the column shifter. Just because I know, because it's happened to me and I've gotten rid of the vehicle. That can be a costly repair type item. So that's the issue. You'll be there, you'll have it in park, maybe you'll shut it off, and then you'll come back out and you can't start it again. You try and put it in neutral, and you hope that you can find the right sweet spot for it to start. So that's what he's starting to exhibit right now.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there any other questions? If there aren't, as the superintendent suggested, what we can do is put approval to purchase the van for an amount up to $25,586 on the consent agenda for the next meeting. Mr. Powell?
Do we have to specify the account it's coming out of?
I don't believe we do.
No.
All right, great. Mr. Ziki, thank you.
Thank you.
And that will take us to item number 5, Board's response to letter to Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, for intervenor status. This was a new business item raised by Board Member Gualiumi at our last meeting, and she took the time to draft a potential letter for the board's discussion tonight. So I'll look to Board Member Gualiumi to share her thoughts on the letter and the process.
Okay. Well, the subject matter in and of itself, as it relates to the Tennessee gas pipeline, is not new to us. We've previously have made a couple of other positions and motions regarding it, but there are a few facts right now, one of which is the comment period to FERC has ended. Secondly, the comment period has ended, and it's expected that Tennessee Gas Pipeline is going to be filing within the next several weeks. I think it's just before Thanksgiving, regarding the pipeline that's going to be going through Merrimack. I currently am not sure where that route stands. It's those last few days prior to the comment period ending. I saw all sorts of different things. I don't know which map is right. I don't know if the school district land is still being considered or not. But that just tells me that no matter where it stands, at some point in the future, the school district land may be considered, and I believe that we need to put in, basically do whatever we can to protect that land for the community that we represent as it relates to the school district and so on. Having said that, one of the options is to, or really an option is to prepare or file for intervenor status. What this means is that we would have to submit within 21 days after Tennessee Gas Pipeline files their proposed route, whatever it is. So given that we only meet every couple weeks, it would be prudent for us to have a understanding of where we all stand on it in order to be prepared to submit if we so choose to do so, which I think we should. What I also understand about the intervenor status, and this is some very complex stuff dealing with the federal energy regulation and a lot of legalese, but in the most simplistic manner, there are some things that FERC does have on its website that spells out some things that we can do, as well as other materials available online. So what I believe we need to do is to apply for this intervenor status within the time frame that FERC designates, and what that will do for us is allow us, it would give us rights that we may not have if we don't take this action. So it would allow us to receive the applicant's filings, any other commission documents related to the case, materials filed by others that are also interested parties. The other thing is, if we, and I don't know if FERC grants, how strict they are in granting or not granting this intervenor status. So I don't know what, what I do know is it's pretty open. People can, it doesn't have to be a government body. If people want to file because they feel that they may be impacted, they're certainly, from what I understand, entitled to do that. And that was a question that was brought up a couple weeks ago. So the other thing that I wanted to point out is if we do file and we are granted intervenor status, it does not force us to ever have to take action. So, for example, if the pipeline ends up being filed to go somewhere, let's say even other than Merrimack, there's nothing that we really have to do unless we so choose. If it's going across school district land, then it gives us basically some rights that we wouldn't have if we didn't submit this letter. So I hope that makes sense, and I'd like to get your thoughts.
Wonderful. Excellent summary. Mr. Schneider has some thoughts.
So one of the questions that I had going into this is, what do we have to do if we are granted intervener status? And there is some wording in the FERC documentation about anything that we submit needs to be submitted to everybody. So, essentially we're part of a group now. I mean, if we're granted intervener status, we are part and parcel to anybody else that has. So if we decide to go this route, we have to understand that anything that we submit, we have to figure out the right way to get that distributed to all the other interveners as part of this process. Best I can tell in looking at the documentation, which I did send links to everybody on that.
It was very helpful.
That was about the only one. There's a lot of definitions of what service is and all that stuff, but that seems to be the only thing. So we just have to be aware that should we do this. Now, for me personally, I'm not against intervener status. It gives us sort of gives us the opportunity. But I will say that as a board member, I will be very interested and cautious about how we use the intervener status as we go through. So, it's one thing to say that I want it. It's another thing is how we're going to use it. So, to me, that's the more interesting question as this process goes along. But
thank you. And my understanding of the documentation related to notification on any communication we make to the other interested parties or those with intervener status is that there's a list maintained, that it doesn't need to go via postage, right? That emails are available and therefore can be distributed. Was that everybody else's read of that as well? Okay, good. All right, Mr. Powell.
Do we know what the town is doing in regards to this?
In looking at their minutes, it looks as if they're looking into it, or maybe it was a proposed agenda item. I can't remember what I had seen, but I believe that they're also looking into the status as well.
Vice Chair Barnes.
It's on Thursday's agenda to talk about next steps and action items. I think the problem is we have a specific timeline. It's very fluid. Everything is so fluid in this project that I don't think we'll ever have a finite plan or a finite idea of what the plan is based on where it's going and what our rights are and whose property it's hitting. And it's just too many moving parts to have a final decision on anything. But I think it's going to be on their agendas until such time as there's nothing else to discuss.
I want to thank you for raising the issue. I think the fluidity of the process, the fact that there are deadlines that fast approach after the Tennessee Gas Pipeline filing with FERC, right? We've got that window. It's important for us, I think, to have this out on the table, talk about it so that when the time comes, we're prepared to either send a letter because we've pre-approved, right, the sending of that letter right at this table, or be able to very quickly react to the filing at our immediate next meeting such that we can get it out the door. So thank you. This is worthwhile for us to have researched and talked about. Mr. Schneider.
it is going to sound like a real nit, but if you go into FERC's site, they spell the word intervener ending in ER, but yet in the phrase in our letter and in some other places it's OR. So I'm sure it doesn't make a difference, but we might want to just be consistent in the way we do it with the way FERC expects it. Apparently there's some online forms that we did. I did see that. There's online forms, some sort of e-submit that you do. And I don't know if I didn't look, is there a specific format of letter that's different than what you've proposed? Is that what it is?
I've seen things submitted that look in the actual motion format, as if it were a legal document. So that was, one other option we have is to get legal counsel's opinion on the letter or how we should be submitting. But it appeared to me that this would satisfy being able to submit to FERC and, and see what they say. But I'm open to that as well if we think as a board that we would like to get legal opinion before we approve the letter. I'm okay with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the spelling was there, but also there's a place that says online. I didn't go any further to look at what the online submission was, so.
Yeah,
We just need to make,
I-
it'd be good if we're consistent, that's all.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the online submission as the board's spokesman to FERC on the 2 letters that we submitted previously. Those letters were drafted and produced electronically, PDF formats. I registered on the FERC site as a representative of the Merrimack School District and submitted through the online submission. And there are different categories. In this case, it was scoping comments, right? I imagine there's a category, although I don't know this for certain, for intervenor status request or something to that effect. Yes, Ms. Guagliumi.
Yes, that is correct. You can submit having the account set up first. That was one thing that the documentation said. If you can also submit by overnight mail, but you'd have to send so many copies, and it just makes sense to do it electronically when we already have the account set up.
Yeah. And then what we did for those other letters was we had a list of a dozen or more CCs. Each of those was given a hard copy letter sent to their office or residence, as the case may be. So I think there's a question on the table, though, as it relates to the wording of the letter and its submission. Would folks feel more comfortable if this letter were run through legal counsel in terms of the drafting of an intervenor status request by an attorney who has experience in that, or do we feel comfortable that the letter should go through as is? Mr. Schneider.
Well, the only reason is if I remember right, the way that your proposed wording was, it talks about as a reminder, and then it refers back to the 2 different letters which state different positions about what we said, because the first time it was school buildings, the second time it was school property. So I guess I'd look for, among other things, to one, make sure we're consistent on how we should be doing this. Should we be putting both? Is it appropriate to put the reminder in there at all? I don't know.
Okay.
And also, it would also be good to understand what phrase and format the town's going to use if they're going to get legal as well.
Okay.
I'd like us to be consistent
All right.
more than anything.
Okay. Vice Chair Barnes.
I think if we have the I'll put it both ways. If the timeline does not afford us the opportunity to find someone with a specialty in this area, I think we need to submit something. If there is the opportunity to afford us a review by legal counsel, I think it behooves us to look to make sure that we don't limit ourselves in any rights being represented by knowing what, having someone with a keen eye on this area to take a look. So, I mean, they may not change one word in this thing, but it might just not, it may not hurt.
Yeah. So along those lines, in conversation with Town Council Chair Harrington, I got the legal counsel contact information that the town is using as it relates to the pipeline situation, because our law firm, this is not their expertise. And so what we can do is make contact before the next meeting, share this letter with them, and get an opinion on how best to word and strengthen the letter in terms of our status. Hopefully that's helpful. Good. And then in terms of schedule, obviously we'll work on the wording. This will be a topic then at our next meeting, and then depending upon where the filing has either happened or is soon to happen, we can talk about the process for either approving the submission of a letter at the triggering, right, of the filing by TGP, or schedule it for a vote at subsequent meetings or an agenda item at subsequent meetings, such. But we can work out that process, I guess, at our next discussion, if that makes sense. Yes.
And then just a reminder, if we do look at the dates, we're looking at, let's say they file on the 20th of November, then that's when the clock would start ticking. We'd have 21 days after that. And so
And our first meeting would be the 7th of November, correct?
December.
Oh, am I looking at 7th of December? I meant to say December.
Is it
I
the
do that
7th
all
or
the time.
6th? What's the 7th, our first meeting in December?
7th.
So that would be putting it really,
We would have 4 days.
If the letter's ready, we could pop it.
yeah, yep.
You have 4 days. So.
But we'll have plenty of, assuming that, right, we would have plenty of time to have pre-worked the
Yep.
letter. Right?
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Great. Anything else on this topic? Thank you, Ms. Guglielmi, and all of you. That takes us to item number 6, Board's position regarding Kinder Morgan land surveys. Another topic Ms. Guglielmi raised at our last meeting, and that is to say that the concern was Kinder Morgan will, at some point soon, in fact, I'm surprised they haven't yet, begin to ask to survey properties and school district property in particular. And the idea was that the board should have a position on the conditions under which we would or would not allow Kinder Morgan to survey our property. And I think it's a great idea. We are, as a body, the caretakers of properties owned by the public. And that as those caretakers, we have a responsibility for their protection. We also need to be transparent about what occurs in discussing those properties. And I think that the model that the town council has held out as criteria under which the lands can be surveyed, I think is a good model for us to start with, perhaps, as a position, with the guiding principle of full transparency to the public and a level of oversight and on the part of the governing body to the activities that take place during the course of the surveys. So the idea would be that we craft something proactively rather than waiting for a request from Kinder Morgan to survey our property that says, if you do request to survey our property, here are the criteria under which we will give you permission to survey the land. And unless you meet this criteria, we do not grant you access to the property to survey it. Does that make sense in concept, in theory? So I'll throw a few thoughts out that I think we might want to consider. One is obviously prior approval. So they need to make contact in advance. We need to set some criteria for how many days in advance. I think we need representatives from central office and probably 2 board members. I would avoid 3 so that we don't create a meeting, but that there are 2 representatives from the board to be designated by the board, and it can be done in a fashion that we determine. I don't know what fashion necessarily we determine that. That any request to survey land is pre-approved, that we schedule a date and a time. If that land has a school building on it, everyone will check in at the main office as a visitor before folks go off and survey the land. We have lands that don't have buildings on them, and so we would need a mechanism for essentially initiating the survey when board members and administration arrive on the property, or perhaps they come to central office and we go over together, something to that effect. But in general, those are the concepts. And then lastly, and I know that this has been a sticking point for the town, is anything discussed during the course of those surveys is public information. In other words, we're just custodians of these properties for the public, both this generation and future generations. And if something is discussed, we're not going to be bound by or agree to any sort of non-disclosure agreement, which I think has been the sticking point that the town has sort of held up on. So those are my thoughts, and I'll open this up for discussion, reaction, because that's what we're doing. Vice Chair Barnes.
You brought a couple of good points up. I think ideally they would meet at the central office and we would escort them to the property.
Okay.
The second thing, and I know that we have some infrastructure for it, but there's always the opportunity for taping as well. We have those resources available through our high school. I know the town does as well through LO, but just seeing what they're looking for, I think it could be very educational for us as stewards of the property, but also for our taxpayers who may want to know what they're doing when they're surveying.
Mm-hmm.
It may help them as they're preparing to be asked for their own properties and seeing what they're looking for from Kinder Morgan. So I think it may be helpful for us to provide a resource.
Mr. Schneider.
So can you clarify what you mean about the sticking point and held under non-disclosure? Was there a situation where one side or the other, or somebody feared that any discussions that happened during that were considered proprietary or under non-disclosure? I'm just curious why it's a sticking point.
I have heard that the criteria from the council was sent to Kinder Morgan for permission to survey the land. There was some back and forth. I don't know how much back and forth. And one of Kinder Morgan's responses was the requirement to have an NDA signed. So it was initiated by Kinder Morgan to the town, which is why permission has not yet been granted to survey town lands.
Which would make it interesting with recording as well. I mean, forget the NDA part about discussions, but recording is even more so, because I could imagine not only it's the topics discussed, but the methodology the surveyor uses to survey, they could say is it's under non. Who knows? I mean, but I guess the question becomes, where do we? I mean, the bottom line is that at some point there's got to be some sort of I keep whacking this thing. There needs to be some sort of whether it's compromise or agreement between them. It sounds like the town council still has not reached agreement with Kinder Morgan from what you just described.
I don't know the status. I know
Okay.
that was the status at a point in time. I don't
Okay.
know whether that's current or not.
Okay, it'd be good to
I
understand
have no way of knowing that.
where it's at and the consistency. That's all.
Sure. Vice Chair Barnes.
Chair Harrington, Town Council Chair Harrington at the FERC meetings over the summer in Nashua specified to FERC their concerns that they were not, that Kinder Morgan didn't even want them at the surveying site when they were being surveyed, when their lands were being surveyed. So that was a concern brought to FERC at that meeting. So that's along those lines as well. So it's a very consistent overture, I think, about what they want and what we as stewards of the community want.
Any other discussion or comments? So if Ms. Gualiumi.
It may be I'm putting the cart ahead of the horse, which would be the next steps once we agree on the criteria to
Yeah.
talk about being proactive as far as, okay.
Yeah, and you teed it up perfectly. What I was going to say after giving pause for anything else was that I can draft a letter that can be sent to Kinder Morgan anticipating that they may want to survey our land, and therefore tell them that these are the criteria under which we'll give permission to survey the land, that they make contact with central office. We schedule a date. They'll be accompanied by 2 people from central office at our discretion, 2 board members at our discretion. We can work that out. They'll check in on that date at central office. We will go to the property, and we reserve the right to tape the meetings, and certainly everything said or seen at those meetings or surveying is available by those board members and administrators to discuss publicly, since they're on the public's land. Is that sufficient? Ms. Gualiumi?
And then I'd recommend we CC a number of folks, like
Yeah.
the town council, for example.
Sure. We can do the standard list that, that we've got. We're getting good at it. Yes, Mr. Marcus.
So if Kinder Morgan doesn't agree to the taping and anything else, do you foresee running into an issue of we draft a letter, have to wait 2 weeks to respond to their response? Does that eventually become an issue where we're wasting too much time? Because I'm assuming they want to do the surveys within a certain time frame, whether they've disclosed that time frame or not. Is that would you imagine that that would be an issue, or no? Like, I just wanted to not clarify, but ask that.
No, it's a great question. And I think the question is one of, it's a qualitative question, right? What is too much time? Which makes an assumption that it's also in our best interest to have them survey the land. I understand what you're saying, and I'm not sure I fully. I'm not sure I would agree that giving up these concerns, or any one of these concerns, is worth expediting the survey process.
I wasn't suggesting that we give up any of the points to expedite it. I was just wondering if we ever run into a problem where they can say, we're wasting too much time on this, we need to survey now. Like, I agree that we should.
Yeah, do they have some recourse with maybe FERC
Yeah.
to say that that's the case? That would be an excellent question for an attorney, perhaps, to answer. I wouldn't know, but maybe we can add that to the list for advice from counsel. So thank you for raising that. I think Ms. Gualiumi and then Vice Chair Barnes.
I was just going to say, as long as they understand our criteria, then it shouldn't hold up their process at all if they give us the request within X number of days that we requested. It would just be the situations where they don't want to concede some of those requirements that, may need to wait until the next meeting. But certainly a good question for the attorney if we're reaching out regarding this topic anyways.
I think the other thing as well that I would say is I like the idea of us being proactive in recognizing they may want to survey our land. I understand a couple of weeks ago that they had been talking somewhere else about wanting to survey our land, and I was called and given a heads up that we might be getting that call, and it hasn't come. And so rather than wait for them to make the request and then give them the criteria, I think us getting it out there is also, I would hope everyone would see that it's in everyone's best interest in terms of timing. Vice Chair Barnes.
Well, a couple of points to that. I think if Kinder Morgan wants us to jump and move faster, that's not our sense of urgency. However, if there's a governmental agency that wanted us to move faster, we as a board will meet as needed. So if a governmental agency came to us, and that's on any issue, we've had
That was
emergency
my
board meeting on over fewer deadlines, but things like we need to add a teacher, and school is starting in 3 weeks because a bunch of kids moved into Thornton's Ferry in like a month. So we can do what we need to do when we need to do it, as often as we need to do it. Hopefully we don't have to, but it's always there for us to do as we need to.
Great. Any other comments, questions on this topic? Okay. So I will draft something and send it around for feedback, if that makes sense. Excellent. Do we have to put these points to a vote in terms of a motion? I think it would be good, yeah. Vice Chair Barnes.
I move that we draft a letter to Kinder Morgan regarding the ability to survey land using the guidelines of the bullet points of expectations put forth by Chair Ortega.
Seconded by Ms. Guagliumi. Do you want to speak to it?
That's good. We're fine.
Okay. We're talked out. Any further discussion? So seeing none, we'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? None. The motion carries 5-0-0. And what is the student rep's opinion?
In favor.
Thank you, Mr. Marcus. Okay, so from one cheery topic to the next, we will go to item number 7, guaranteed maximum health insurance for 2016-2017. Business Administrator Chevenel.
As you all know, around this time, during the beginning of budget season, we start off with a guaranteed maximum rate insurance increase from the Health Insurance Trust to assist us in building the budget. In the springtime, the actual rate will be known. Last few years, the GMR has been exactly what we've gotten as far as the renewal in the spring. This year, the guaranteed maximum rate is around 12.5%, which is a little bit higher than we had anticipated, and we are making inquiry of that to the Health Insurance Trust to get a more detailed explanation of why. Right now, I can't answer that question. I don't have enough information. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schneider.
Can you give us a ballpark number of what that 12.5% might increase our budget planning by?
Well, it could be $800 to $1 million on the health insurance bill. I haven't gone through and done all the calculations based upon the latest configuration of the staff. It could be much less than that, but I'd rather give you a higher number and give you good news than to give you a lower number than
That's why I said
disappoint
ballpark.
you.
I know you've done nothing because the number just came in, but
Yeah.
we're just trying to figure. I just want to know scope and scale. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
we've had some movement and change in demographic of our group, and different movements to the Matthew Thornton plan, which is good for us long term. But the cost of the district, Matthew Thornton or Blue Choice, is the same anyway, regardless. But once I get that tied down, I'll give you the direct budgetary impact of that.
Vice Chair Barnes.
And I'm not holding you to this. If you say you don't know it, that's fine. Can you give kind of an estimate, last few years, what the increase was? Wasn't it about like 5-6%?
The last few years, we've averaged around a 5% increase. And
Yeah.
this has been a bit of a... There's been a blip in the radar over the last 5 years.
And before that, I think we had a 19% one. It was probably
We
like
had a
8-9 years ago.
19%, and then, a few years before that, we had a 27% increase, which was shocking enough to say the least.
It's never gone down, has it?
No. Well, no. 1 year
One
we
year did,
had a
yeah.
minus 1.6.
Ah,
I remember
never
that.
say never.
And then we had the spike the next year.
So, hate dips and spike. You know how I feel about those.
I know. So do I.
So thank you for the
Yeah.
for the historical.
One of the things I would like to see, I have a lot of questions as it relates to this. Not only the variability year over year from negative amounts to 20% increases, 3.5%, 5%, up to 12%. We go with Health Trust because we're in a risk pool, right? We're spreading our risk conceivably, yet our rate gets set individually and is very much case-based. If it's at all possible, and I know Debbie Clayton is not responsible for the setting of the rates, but if she could come back with the executive director of Health Trust to address the board, if that were a possibility before we got into budgeting season to answer questions, I would welcome it.
So they have already been asked, Debbie Clayton and the executive director. I just don't have the date. I don't have it for tonight. The request was for November 16th, but it could be December 7th because I want both of them at the same time. So it's on the radar.
Be educational anyway.
Just to give you some information, I did ask for some surrounding area districts what their GMR is going to be, or what their rates are in comparative to us.
Are they Health Trust?
They're all Health Trust. They're all similar districts in this area. They wouldn't. I have the exact rates that they're paying right now. They wouldn't name them by names, but you can kind of do a ballpark as to what they are. If all goes through, let's take the Matthew Thornton family plan. We would be paying. Well, the district gross cost would be $2,178. There's another district near us that's around 1927. There's one that's 1843. There's one that's 2152, and there's one that's 2017. So because of this rate increase, we leapfrogged a couple of those districts, but there's still some in the same ballpark that we're in right now currently, even with that rate increase.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
I thank you for being the messenger, not the message itself. And that takes us now to item number 8, update on school board's invitation to town council for joint meeting. At our last meeting, we discussed Merrimack Safeguard and the nature of the grant and the need to show progress on a sustainability plan for the Safeguard program in year 7, which is coming up. In that regard, the superintendent made steps on a possible way of showing that sustainability that included the district funding a portion of the SRO position out of the school district budget. At this table, we heard a number of opinions, almost in unison, that felt that the position is a police officer first and should be funded from the police officer's budget, and that, or from the police department's budget, and that the board is committed to Merrimack Safeguard and as well that position, and would be willing to consider funding of other things in Merrimack Safeguard like outreach, etc., but that we shouldn't be paying for police officers. And so I was directed by the board to suggest that this is a topic we shouldn't have solely as one body and or lob something over to the council, and that we should have a joint meeting on the topic. And so I spoke with Town Council Chair Harrington and shared all of what I just shared previously with her, and she agreed that this actually is an important topic for both bodies to discuss together. And we talked about trying to target the first or second week in December to hold a joint meeting. And so we both agreed as well to look at topics for discussion. So we know that there are some that we've discussed previously that we need to raise as well. And so I would ask you to send your suggestions for those topics to me so that she and I can work out a preliminary agenda and try to schedule a date. And if you know of any dates in the first 2 weeks of December that will not work for you, please let me know. The Town Council has this on their agenda for Thursday night, I believe it is, or for their next meeting. And so I want to thank the board for initiating that request, and administration for initiating the discussion. Mr. Schneider.
If we do have a joint meeting like this, is it our turn to host it and create
It
the
is.
format and things like that?
It is our turn, yes.
So are we going to talk next time, if it gets agreed to, where we want to have it and sort of the way we want to set it up? Because I know last time when we had it here, we couldn't have the entire boards all sitting at the same place, and it was a little cumbersome to deal with. So.
Sure. So our other option is to return to the high school, and we can set up the U-shaped table as we have for joint meetings in the past. I don't want to say the only downside. There are a few trade-offs with doing that. One is temperature in the room. It will be a little cooler than it is here. It will be noisier due to the fan that goes there. And the meeting will not be able to be seen live. It will be recorded. But other than that, those would be the trade-offs. If there's a preference, I am willing to do what the board desires in terms of meeting place. To me, it's more important to meet, but I understand your concern. It was less than ideal. Vice Chair Barnes.
The one that I think we don't use is the JMU's APR, but we have done live broadcasts from there. We do the live announcements of election results from there, so we do live from there. Why can't we consider that location as well?
Hadn't thought of it. I don't know the last time something's been done from there, but okay. JMU's APR. We can look into it.
Yep. Well, we do our deliberative sessions. That was the last live thing we did there.
The APR. I'm sorry, I was thinking about the MES APR with
no.
with the cartoon characters
No,
on the back
no.
wall. Sorry, my bad.
That's all
we
right.
have had meetings there, but yeah.
No.
Okay. My bad.
So,
Okay.
But yeah,
Yep.
we've done live from there.
Yep. Thank you. Great point. Any other comments? Okay. Excellent. So please send me your thoughts on agenda items. I know we've got a list that we'd already started. So that will take us then to item number 9, other correspondence. Mr. Schneider.
Since our last meeting, I've received an email from a constituent about the school lunch program in Londonderry and some of the recent impacts there. So.
Okay. Any other correspondence? I shared with the board the response we received from Senator Ayotte to our letter to FERC, which was very similar to her response to our first letter to FERC, but we appreciated hearing back from her. No other correspondence?
Wasn't there something from a parent, a follow-up letter regarding an incident at the middle school with the soccer team? Was that
There were,
in between?
I think we mentioned that at the last meeting.
Okay, I thought there was a follow-up
Yeah, there
after
was
that.
one after.
Was there, oh, okay. So there was another one. I'm sorry. Thank you. Sometimes it's hard to
Dates, yeah.
keep them all set. Thank you. Comments? Any comments? Okay, seeing none. Item number 10, new business. No new business to come before the board. We'll move to item 11, committee reports. Vice Chair Barnes.
We had a few. First, on the 20th at 3:30, PERC met. Cinda's also on PERC. 4 new courses were reviewed for consideration for addition to the high school course of study. The first was AP World History. It would be the, I believe, 3rd AP History course offered at the high school. And then this interdisciplinary, and I've heard that a lot from, the last few PERC meetings have had a lot of interdisciplinary coursework. So basically what you're doing is you're either, if it's a double class, you're getting 2 credits, one for each subject area, or if it's a smaller class, you choose the credit that you want to take. So we had an interdisciplinary science and social studies class presented, which basically that's the overall plan, is to do that. But an example of a unit would be climate and weather. So basically how the human impact of droughts would be an example, climate disasters and their impact on society. Think of Superstorm Sandy and the ice storm and how it knocked us out for days and kind of took the town offline, those kind of things. So they would look at that and study the social aspect of it, the sociology type angle, and the science angle of it as well. So another one was Truth and Logic, which is basically an English and math interdisciplinary, but that's one where you would actually choose your whether you want English or math, and that has to do with it's very comparable to a college class that a lot of people take, but it's getting through the logic using math as a way of solving a problem and working through things like conflict. So it's very interesting. And then there was one other, and it was Chinese culture. And that was, it's a non-language course, but would be taught by our Mandarin teacher. And it involves Chinese art and Chinese cooking. So it'd be like half a year of Chinese art, and some of the very specific things to do with papers and paints, and then Chinese cooking and some of the very specific things they do there. One of the nice things they brought up was the opportunity to find resources through UNH to source some of the materials specific from China and get them at a low cost, because we could work through that partnership. So those 4 were reviewed, and the next PERC meeting, which is November 10th, I will not be at, but I think we're going to probably go to talk toward approving or moving forward with those courses as appropriate, or getting more information where needed. Greater Woods happened 2 hours later, and that was also on the 20th. They're doing trail work on November 14th, just doing some spruce ups before the snow season comes, kind of our last opportunity, putting out a new kiosk out by the Amherst border, because people kind of come in and they don't know they're in Merrimack. So they're kind of following the Amherst line and thinking they're following Amherst rules. And then there was a big announcement, which actually made the union leader as well, that the Conservation Commission is buying 152 new acres. They're closer to the Amherst property, but it's going to bring the Greater Woods property over 600 acres. And the deal is expected to close on November 10th, but it will create some great opportunity for expanded land. The area that's being purchased was actually an area that was used heavily by locals for things like a shooting, like target shooting, but because it'll be conservation land, it's going to have much more stringent regulations, and that means it gives us opportunity to really expand what we do on that property as well as the district, because as we know, it comes out of our backyard as well. And then the district parent group met on the 28th. We reviewed the goals of each building group and special ed support group in regards to fundraising or events. The special education parent group has been very busy. They've had 2 presentations from Lynn Lyon so far this year. The first was a lecture about anxiety, but the second was a more interactive one, and that was done on, I was it the 29th, actually? So the next night. So there have been 2 events held for that. This is my plug, so everybody take notes. The 32nd annual Thornton's Ferry Elementary Craft Fair will be held this Saturday, November 7th. And it's one of the biggest craft fairs we have in the area, and a long-standing successful tradition for our Thornton's Ferry school. And then, did you want to talk about the meeting this morning as well, as far as committee? It's kind of
Sure.
on the side, but I didn't even know where to stick it, honestly. At the request of administration, Chris and I met with the high school principals today, and it was about the goal of trying to find a way of developing a formula and documentation and data plan for co-curricular funding and sports funding. So we can find areas of commonality, we can find areas where maybe we could do better with funding. I know it's something that we talk about every year as a board. Are we doing what we should be doing? Are we doing what we can be doing? And what aren't we doing, and who's doing it if we're not? So I think that was basically, in a very simplified way, the overview. So in that, I basically made a template for us to work with, and with some feedback. It basically has every team, every co-curricular would fill out this template, whether it be the coach or the advisor. It would talk about the team, the number of participants, and all the expenses that go in it: uniforms, coaches, referees, travel, insurance, supplies, awards, meals, equipment, entry fees when it comes to invitationals or competitions. And then the costs. What is the cost? And where's the cost coming from? Is it coming from Merrimack School District, fundraising and booster clubs? Is it coming from third-party funding like grants and corporate donations? Or is it coming from mom and dad? So that being said, it'll give us an idea of what we're doing and what resources have to come from outside the district to achieve the goals of some of those teams. And that was both sports and co-curriculars. So I have copies for everyone, including that way. So,
I have
and
one.
I know you have. I emailed you and Marge as well, so that way the district would have it. But we'll be, preparing if they have any questions for us as far as how to compile the data. But something that hopefully will give us what we're looking for come budget season, because every year we're looking for that data that helps us know that we did the right thing. So hopefully this will do it. If not, it's a start that we can build on. That's all I got.
Thank you. Can I, just one thing you said, it was early on in PERC, when mentioning the addition of AP World History, you said it's the 3rd AP course at the high school. I just want to be clear.
AP History course.
Okay.
At the high school.
That's what, okay.
Yes.
I heard
I
3rd
know.
AP course, and
No, we've got
didn't-
more than 3, but
Exactly.
the 3rd in the history department.
I just wanted
Sorry.
to clarify. Thank
right.
you, lest anyone think we only offer 3. Any other committee reports? Ms. Guglielmi.
Shannon covered the PERC committee, but I also had Parks and Rec. And just a heads up that the holiday parade and Christmas tree lighting is coming up on December 6th. And also,
Already.
I know, well, if you think about it, it's
Yeah.
just a month away. It's
Yeah.
really, time is going fast. There's also a lot of activity around the dog park planning, and a number of, quite a bit of discussion actually around the rental of the Wasserman Park facilities and how that might be constructed versus resident, non-resident, public, nonprofit, things like that. So they're getting ready to be able to rent that to the public, which could be used for all sorts of different things, family events, corporate meetings, and things like that. So, but it's just a matter of getting the sprinkler system in and all the other stuff that I had brought up at our last board meeting, or at least one of the last ones.
I recall it. Thank you. Any other committee reports? Mr. Marcus.
This is just a comment to clarify what Vice Chair Barnes said and your question. Just off the top of my head, I can think of 6 AP classes in the Social Studies department alone. So some of those, 3 of them, I think, are new. So there's definitely more than 3, even just in the Social Studies department.
I think there are 3 history ones. There's like world history, American history, and I can't remember the 3rd history, but the others are like economics
Yeah, economics, government,
and government.
psychology.
Right. So they're in the social studies department, but the 3rd history option. So that, yeah, so I could. Yes. in the minor in something else, right?
It's wonderful, though. Getting clarity, which is good. Any other committee reports? Mr. Powell.
I don't have a committee report, but I have a. Would it be appropriate to raise a question about the meeting that you had today?
Sure.
I see in. Let me find it here. I just saw it and I didn't mark it. In the second paragraph, the fiscal health benefits for the district include knowing what we are not funding that may or may not be supported by future parent/team member efforts. It will also give the district an oversight of those booster clubs representing our district's athletes and athletes and non-sports teams. Is the intention that we're now going to be overseeing the booster clubs?
No, just getting an idea of the funding and where it's coming and going, so we know what's going through it. So we could be taking things for granted because they're already taken care of, that they find to be a need, and it's been covered by the booster club, and so we don't have it. We're not asking them to work under us as a district, but we just want to make sure we have those open lines of communication so that we have an idea of funding and what it's supporting.
Okay. Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah. Here's the way I think about it. We've talked at this table, I can remember bringing this issue up when I was on the budget committee, so it's going on 7 years ago, related to the funding of co-curriculars. And we've gotten to a point where we've slowly increased the amount of funding, and we've even made statements about, well, should we fund it all in terms of postseason success and travel? And it's a whole different animal, right, when we're sending kids to, Orlando or, Las Vegas or the University of Wisconsin to compete in one of these things. Very different than sending a bus to Exeter to play in a football game. And so the challenge with understanding the overall costs of these programs and what's being funded how is no program, whether it's athletics or co-curriculars, is entirely funded by the district, right? So the sport gets funded or the club gets funded in part by the district, in some cases large part, in other cases less so. Boosters raise a lot of money. Some of those go directly to program expenses like buying equipment or uniforms, etc. And in other cases, there are scholarships that are given out, right? And so you can't look at all booster funding, but you really need to understand the costs of the program that are coming from those boosters. And then there are alternative funds, right, grants, etc. Ultimately, a number of these as well, parents are paying out of pocket. In the case of sending a kid to FIRST Robotics competition, costs may be defrayed by the school's contribution as well as the booster's contribution, but mom and dad sometimes have to write a check to get the kid there, right? So the whole goal is to try to get a sense for athletics and co-curriculars as to what's being spent on the program, how much is the district spending, how much are boosters raising, and then how much are parents paying out of pocket to understand, do we have parity, are there needs that we're missing? So that was really the
Well, I appreciate that
purpose.
clarification. I wanted to make sure I had an understanding of what the intention was and that we were not trying to do oversight of the booster clubs, because I don't think that would be appropriate.
Nope, they are entirely separate organizations
Perfect.
from the
Thank
school
you.
district
That-
that support district programs.
This is a great first step, and I don't know whose idea it was, but thank you for taking the first step. And because, as you said, we have been talking about this for years, and it's always been, okay, so how do we do this? And I think this is a great way to start that journey. And if it doesn't come to fruition this budget cycle, we'll be well on our way.
And that's the thing, we looked at that template, and I said, I know what I think we need, but there are things I probably couldn't, and I put that together, I'm like, but there are things I don't even know about possibly that could be added to that and be appropriate to compile. what we need is data, and we don't, with data, we can make informed and
Absolutely.
well-informed decisions, and we need to do that going forward with all big decisions that we make in budget season. There's nothing bigger.
Well, thanks for doing that.
Yeah. Any other committee reports? Mr. Schneider? What do you,
So, I had a comment on this.
Oh,
If you
okay.
guys are done, then that's,
oh,
so I have a question. When something like this occurs, and there's a activity be undertaken such as this, how do we as other board members give input into this? Because, like, for example, I looked at the list, and there's some ideas that immediately came to mind that would have been good to share.
right.
So the question is, how, do we ever get the opportunity to feed some ideas into you guys representing the board ahead of time? Or, now that it's taken place, how do we feed in some of our thoughts to what's here?
Feel free to share your thoughts in terms of scheduling a meeting to give administration time before the budget process. I felt that the best thing to do was to have Vice Chair Barnes and myself represent the board's request, right, for more data on this topic. And did not get this out there for specific feedback. In fact, that sheet I saw this morning. I walked into the meeting with similar ideas, but Vice Chair Barnes had pulled that together just in advance of the session. So what I would say is, and all of that was by a means of giving administration time, because there's work behind collecting information to feed that. I would say if you've got feedback that you want to share on it, feel free to share that with us, and we can circle that back to administration.
Right. I mean, the one that came to mind just looking at this was, we always struggled during the budget thing about what normal travel and expenses are during a regular season,
Right.
and then what the differential is when you go to
For postseason.
postseason, which many times can involve more significant travel and things like that.
Right,
So
right.
that a delineation between the regular and then the extra
Yep.
would have been one good dimension to have. So it's questions like that I had. So,
But you've got a budget on some levels, right, for...
I understand. I'm not picking apart what you guys did, but it caught me by surprise that you had a meeting,
Yep.
and it might have been good. I don't know the right way. I know you're on a time crunch.
Yep.
Would have been good for us to maybe
Okay.
feed thoughts into you guys so
Sure.
you can represent our.
In an
our
ideal
view.
world, I would have gotten your thoughts.
I understand.
We would have
I'm just-
gotten your thoughts.
I understand.
I appreciate
It was a comment
your
just about the way things happen sometimes and sharing it.
So noted. Ms. Gualiumi.
Well, just a simple comment to that. I think you got to start somewhere. So I think that the discussion started, and we can build on, what's out there. And I think it's a great
Incremental
start.
progress.
And I thank you for you
Yeah.
guys for doing that.
Just so folks recognize, too, the other aspect that came out that I think the board should be aware of is the nature of these numbers that we're going to get back. Athletics are very well understood and predictable in terms of estimating, in terms of what it's going to take to get a team, through so many games with refs, with uniforms, to postseason travel, et cetera. The co-curricular clubs vary from year to year in terms of number of participants, where they're going, how much that's going to cost, et cetera. And so part of the guidance, if you will, that Vice Chair Barnes and I gave was that very similar to your point, Ms. Gualiumi, which is we have to start somewhere. Historical data with, number of participants going to Orlando. We recognize next year may be in California, right, and that those numbers may vary, but we just want to get an order of magnitude understanding of what these costs are. Ms. Gualiumi.
Well, and I think further to that too, it's really understanding where we're talking apples to apples. If
Right.
we apply consistency, and where it's not apples to apples, where it's apples to oranges, and it's hard to filter through that. I think that's part of the process.
Absolutely.
More to your point.
Absolutely. Thank you. Good discussion. Mr. Marcus.
And on a final note, I just wanted to thank
You
Vice
think.
Hopefully on a final note. I wanted to thank Vice Chair Barnes because as a student who's involved in more co-curriculars, and a lot of my friends are as well, I think that this will be, like Mrs. Guadalume said, a really good first step for looking at issues in funding, or lack thereof, hopefully. And so I wanted, from a student perspective, I wanted to say thank you because it's a really good idea.
Very good. We will let that be the final comment.
It's not, though, because I was going to say, we also got from the administration, I will share this with you, but my toner at the office ran out, so we couldn't do it. I'm really having ink issues today, I'm not going to lie. But it's a list of all the co-curricular clubs in our district this year. So it'll give you an idea of the scope and number of different areas that kids are participating, so that might help.
Quidditch made it.
Quidditch did, yeah.
All right, that will take us to item number 12, public comments on agenda items. Is there anyone wishing to address the board? Seeing none, we will take a moment to sign the manifest, and I will try to say, I will entertain a motion to enter non-public session per RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, subsections A, B, and C, made by Vice Chair Barnes. Is there a second? Made by Mr. Schneider. Ms. Guadalume, how do you vote?
In favor.
Mr. Schneider.
In favor.
Mr. Powell.
In favor.
Vice Chair Barnes.
In favor.
And the chair votes in favor, so that motion carries 5-0-0. I will ask the student rep's opinion.
In favor.
Okay, thank you, sir. And so with that, we will enter non-public session. Thank you, everyone. Good night.